Hi everyone and welcome back to another episode of T-Dog RC, and this is part 2 of the build log video of the H-King PC-6, which is a BALSA aircraft made by VQ Models, sold by Hobby King. And basically today I'm going to be making a start on the build. And what I'm going to do first is take a look through the instruction manual, because with something like this I always like to spend a little bit of time and just go through the instruction manual from cover to cover, just to make sure there's no special procedures for anything or a certain order which you need to do things, particularly with a model like this where it's not just your average foamy that's fairly straightforward to stick together. There's a bit more to do on a model like this, so I think that's a good idea. So I'm going to take a look at this and then we'll get stuck in. Right, so I've had a look at the manual. It's quite a nice manual. It's pretty clear, to be fair. Obviously it goes through what sort of tools you need, whether you need epoxy or CA, shows you the different engine types there, so you can I'm putting a 1.2 4-stroke glow, which is actually what it specifies there, but you can also put a 20cc gas engine in or petrol engine, and obviously you can make it electric if you want to do that. It needs quite a few servos, because there's actually 2 servos at the end of the fuselage for the elevator, which I didn't realise. So when I was unboxing it the other day, I wondered why there was only one snake inside the fuselage. That makes sense now, because that one snake is for the rudder, and then the elevator uses 2 little mini servos at the back. But then interestingly, the ailerons and flaps use standard full-size servos. So I have got some of these up in my collection of bits up there, so I'll have to dig some of those out. So first thing it says to do is to put the landing gear on, and then put the tail wheel on. And this was what I was talking about earlier. It's saying you need to put the tail wheel on, because you need to put that on before you then glue the rudder in, because it's a steerable tail wheel off the rudder, and that needs to be in place before you CA the hinges on the rudder. So always good to check. So it talks about doing the landing gear, the vertical stabilizer and rudder, horizontal stabilizer and elevator. Then it goes on to the engine mount, and it gives you pretty clear instructions here. So I'm going to go in for this option, the glow engine. I'm not sure if you can see that there. That's what I'm going for. So it says to mount the engine upside down. You do get the engine mount in the box, and there's marks on the fuselage already, and hopefully on the engine mount as well. So you line it up with, that gives you the height of the engine mount. The width obviously you set to the size of your engine, and then how far forward it is, it gives you another measurement here. So it's 123 to 125 mils from the firewall to the propeller, what's the word, propeller collet on the engine. I'm not quite sure if that's the right term. So I'm talking about this bit here, the back plate where the propeller butts up to. So it needs to be 125 mils from there to the firewall, and that gives you the correct clearance for the cow. So that's important, obviously. When we do that, it's going to be a good case of good old measure several times and drill or cut once to make sure that's right. And then once you've done that, it then moves on to the wings, putting the aileron and flap servos in, connecting the control horns, etc. That's all straightforward, and that's it really. Then gives you the CG. Hopefully this one will balance out not too bad, because well, they're not that heavy, but you've got the servos in the back which will add some weight to the back. But I know before I've had to add various extra bits of weight here and there, so we'll see how that is anyway once we've got it all together. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave putting the horizontal stab and vertical stab on just yet, and I'm going to get some work done on the fuselage. So I think I'll get the engine mount put on first, get the rudder servo in position, because I've got limited space here and it is quite a big model and I don't really want to be swinging it around with the tail feathers on the back, so I kind of leave that off as long as I can really. So the other thing is, because I am using a glow engine, it doesn't mention anything in here to say whether it's been fuel proofed. I suspect it hasn't, because I imagine they don't do that sort of thing in the factory because they don't know what sort of engine or motor you're going to be putting in it. So first job for me is going to be getting the firewall and fuel tank area, etc. fuel proofed. So that's what I'm going to do first of all to kick things off. So I'll flip the camera up to the bench and we'll make a start. Right, so it's on the bench, the fuselage is on the bench. It's such a beast, obviously you can only see a small portion of it, but as I've said, my first job is going to be to get it fuel proof. So this is the stuff I am using, which is some JP high grade satin fuel proofer. So simple task really, you know, it's just painting it on with a brush. So I've got to do the front of the firewall here, make sure I get it in all down here in these gaps, and then all inside here, which is where the fuel tank's going to go, back of the firewall, and then I'll also do the lid as well, just to be on the safe side, because that's probably going to get splashed. Especially with glow engines, they pump all sorts of stuff out, unburnt fuel, burnt fuel, oil, the whole lot. They're pretty messy, so you want to make sure that you get good coverage with the fuel proofer so that your balsa wood and ply doesn't rot, basically. So I'm going to get on with that, and I'll be back soon. Okay, that job's done. So I've fuel proofed the inside of this, and the other advantage of using the fuel proofer is that if you an edge like this where you're not really going to see it with the covering, you can paint it on that and it seals the covering down as well a bit better, stops it from peeling up at the edge. So that's good. So I've done that. I've done inside here. And of course I've done the firewall as well, so just waiting for all that to dry. It's a bit tricky because obviously it's already assembled, so there's two floors here. There's the bottom of the model, and then there's this floor here, so it's quite tricky to get to the bottom floor, but there are, as you can see, there are a lot of holes in there, so you can just about get the brush in, and I just use one of these thin brushes so I can get into these holes and things like that. And it's a bit of a messy job, but it doesn't take too long really once you get going, and obviously get it just on all the areas where you think you might splash a bit of fuel, because the problem is the ply or balsa will just soak up the fuel if you don't fuel proof it, and eventually it just turns into a bit of a mess. So it's definitely important that you make sure that you do this. Even if you buy one of these ARF type models, you need to make sure that you give it this treatment first if you're going to be using fuel and not battery. Obviously you don't need to do it if you're going to be using a battery. So I think I've decided that my next job on this, I am going to get the engine mount put on and get the engine mounted, because that for me is probably the sort of most stressful bit of the build, really, because you need to make sure I get that right. You know, so I'd like to get that bit out of the way, and also once, as I said, I wanted to do as much work as I can without putting the tail on, so it's easier for me to move around the workshop, basically. So that's something I can get done. Obviously I can't start work on any of that until this fuel proofer has dried, so I am going to leave it now for tonight, leave this to dry overnight. It's actually my birthday tomorrow, so I won't be doing any work on this tomorrow because we're going out for a meal. But I might have another crack at getting that done. So next time I come to do a bit of work on this, which will be in a couple of days' time, I will be getting the engine mount put on and getting that all lined up. Right then, guys, I'm trying to think about the best way to film this. Obviously it's quite a big model and my space is limited here, but what I've done is I've put it on my model stand for the time being. So that's probably going to be the easiest way for me to work on it and try and film as well at the same time, which is always a little bit of a challenge. But yeah, today's all about getting the engine mounted. So as I've mentioned before, the engine that I'm going to be using is this, which is an SC 120 4-stroke, which is 20cc pretty much, and it's going to be mounted upside down at the front here. And then the main thing I've got to get right is I need to make sure that the front of the prop nut, or this bit here, the front of that, which is where the prop butts up to, that's got to be about 124 millimeters away from the firewall, basically. So it's actually pretty much absolutely bang on where it is, like that. That's with the engine pushed right up to the firewall, which is fine. That's not going to cause any issues if that's what I need to do. Yeah, that's pretty much bang on 124. It does say up to 125. It probably is just about 125, so that's lucky. But I guess that's the way they've designed it, because this is the exact engine that it's meant to take, a 120 4-stroke nitro. So we need to get this bag of goodies. So let me just get this open. So in here I've got this little bag which has got everything I need for this job, hopefully. We've got the one of the engine mounts, or both the engine mounts, should I say. And they're going to fasten on like this. Obviously get them lined up. So I've got to mark those up and then drill the 4 holes through the firewall, and then on the back of the firewall we've got some of these blind nuts, so they'll go on the back, and then we'll get the once I've got that mounted up and in the right position, then I can play around with where the engine's going to go on the mount. But as I've sort of just looked, it's probably going to be pushed as far back as it can go against the firewall. And then going by the instructions, it shows us that there should hopefully be a mark on the bottom of the well, there's 2 marks, but there's a lower mark on the engine mount, which lines up with this line here, which you might not be able to see, but there's a line here on the firewall. So I've just basically got to line it up with that. Make sure obviously it's the right width for the size of the engine, so I'll need to just make a note of that. And then one other thing to mention is I have checked already, and they have built in the thrust angle on the firewall, so it's already got some right hand thrust angle, so that's good. So I don't need to worry about that. I can just mount the engine mount straight on. So I'm going to get stuck into that, and then I'll be back in a couple of minutes once I've done that. Okay, so I have got the this right-hander mount put in. I've not put the blind nuts in yet, but I've just secured it using just the bolts. It's strong enough just for now, just while I get everything lined up. And what I've done is I've measured the centre line of the engine. Sorry you can't see that. So I've measured the centre line of the engine to where the mount touches it here, and then marked that out on here, and then got it lined up as per the instruction manual. So there is a mark on the side of the engine mount which lines up to this line here, and now when I put that on, probably can't quite pick it up from, oh, it goes that way, can't quite pick it up from the camera, but that lines up very nicely with the centre line that they've put on the that they've marked on the firewall. But it's important to note that that isn't actually the centre line of the model. It's the engine is slightly offset because you've got the thrust angle. They move the engine over to the right slightly to make the prop sit in the middle, basically. So when you first look at it, it does look like it's going to be offset, which is correct, if that makes sense. So all I've got to do now is mark up where this one's going to go, and then drill the holes for that, 2 4mm holes, and then I can get the blind nuts in and get it all tightened up. Okay, so got the engine mount on using these 4mm bolts, and then washers on that side, and then blind nuts on the back. If I can just try and show you, just turn the mount round, so you can see the bottom blind nuts there. These blind nuts up at the top here, so these two were pretty fiddly, just to get your sort of finger in and get them lined up, but that's just the way these things are. Just have to be a bit patient and work through it. Eventually got them on. This one for some reason was a lot harder than that one. Maybe it's because I'm right-handed or something, I don't know. So and the engine fits in. It's a bit tricky to show this with one hand, but you can just about see there. I think the engine fits in perfectly there. So I'm pretty chuffed with that, the way that's gone on. So what I'm going to do now is I just need to turn the fuselage upside down and then mark the holes to put the engine, to mount the engine onto the mount. Okay, so got the fuselage upside down now, and this is how the engine sits upside down. And I've measured from the firewall to this point here, which is where the prop's going to go up to, and that should be anything up to 125 mils, and it's just over. It's 127 mils, so it's just sticking out slightly too much, which is probably better that it sticks out than it's too short. Obviously, if it was too short, you could just move it forwards on the mount. But what I'm going to do is just drill a couple of holes. I don't even need to go all the way through, just on the back, on the firewall, because these two bolts here that hold the carburetor on are just they're the first thing that butt up to the firewall. So, and they are probably just over 2 mils. So I think if I can get those to sit flush on the back of the firewall, that should be absolutely spot on. Then should be about 125 mils, which is the perfect clearance that I need for the cow. So really, that's not bad. The engine's gone in, well, lined up pretty well. Then obviously once I've done that, I can then mark my holes here and drill those out on the engine mount. And then I've just got to mess around with the silencer once I'm ready to put the cowl on, but I'm not going to worry about that too much at this stage. So yeah, I'll get that firewall drilled out and then get this mounted, and I'll show you the results. Okay, so the engine is mounted. I've only just put these 2 bolts on just for now, just to secure the engine just temporarily, because I'm going to take it off again in a minute. And one tool that I use is this, which is a Great Plains tool for getting the centre of your engine on the mount. It's really useful. It's got this little spring mechanism here, and then this cone shaped bit here, which you just push into the top of the engine mount, and then there's a little drill that comes out like that, and it makes sure that you get the holes dead center in the engine mount every time. So it's a nice little tool. That it's not, I think it's about 15 pounds, something like that, but works really well. So use that to get these lined up, and I'm really pleased with the way that this has gone together. Actually, it's gone on really nicely. It's really, you know, almost perfectly lined up the center of the engine with the center mark on the firewall, so that's all good. I did drill the hole in the back of the firewall for these 2 carburetor bolts to fit into. Okay, just to show you the 2 holes that I drilled for the back of the carburetor. So it's just these 2 bolts here, and I've drilled them there and there. And to get it all lined up, all I did was use a Sharpie, put a load of ink on the back of those, and then just push them up to the firewall, and that left me 2 perfect marks there and there. And then just drilled those out with a 6mm drill, I think it was, and then those 2 bolts just slot in very nicely. And even though I've done that, it does still sit a mil or so more than it recommends in the manual. So this is going to stick out slightly more, but I can't really do anything about that because I can't push the engine back anymore, because then the carburetor is just going to, there's nowhere for the carburetor to go. But I'm not too concerned, because as I've said, it just means that this is perhaps just going to stick out a mil from the front of the cowl, but I may be able to adjust the cowl anyway on the fuselage. So it's pretty much spot on. You know, I'm not going to worry too much about being 1mm out from what it says in the manual. And as I said, I'll play around with that when I come to fit the cowl. So I'm going to take the engine back off now, because there's no point in leaving it on. The only thing I will do is probably just mark the hole for the throttle cable, so I can get that drilled out and get a snake put in there and get the servo mounted there. And then the other thing I need to do is where I've drilled the holes for the 2 bolts to go into at the back of the carburetor, I just need to put some more fuel proofer on that, because that's just bare wood now. So I'm going to take the engine off, get that fuel proofed. Before I take the engine off, mark the hole for the throttle, and then that'll be me done for this evening. And then I'll be back soon to get the servos mounted in the fuselage and show you that process. And I've bought some bits for it which came in the week. I got these from Wheelspin Models, so I'll just show you what I've got first of all here. Make sure that's empty. It is. So first thing is the fuel tank. So although we did get one, so we got this one with the model, and it's an okay tank. I mean, it's not going to set the world on fire, but it would do the job. But I just like the Dubro tanks, particularly like the lip that they have on them here, so it doesn't kink all the pipe work coming out of there. So 16-ounce fuel tank, so it's a little bit bigger. I suspect that one's probably a 14-ounce tank that you get with it. So this should, I imagine, give me around about 10 minutes of run time, possibly a little bit longer, which is plenty. So that's that. Then I've got a fuel filter, inline fuel filter. Always put those on with nitro engines. 4-stroke plug. That's just a spare really, because there is one in it that's a working plug, but I thought I'd get one. And then I've also got one of these which I really like, and I've got one of these on my VQ Tiger Moth with the 65 4-stroke. And this is a little, they call it, it's a Dubro product again, easy fill fueling valve. And basically you fasten that to the cowl or somewhere like that so it sticks out the bottom. it goes that way actually. So this bit would be inside the cow, and then basically to fill it up, you just pull this, and it opens up this valve. You fill it up, and then when you've finished filling it, you push it, and it closes this valve. So what it means is that you can fill it through the needle valve pipe, and you don't really need. So you only need 2 pipes basically. It just makes the plumbing a lot easier, and it just makes it a lot easier to fill up. So yeah, you can see on here it's got to the carburetor, to the tank. So when you pull it out, it blocks the nozzle to the carburetor up and opens the tank one, and then when you pull it in, it just seals the filling hole basically, and allows the fuel to run through both of those. So yeah, nice little thing, works really well. And then I've got a big battery pack. Could be a little bit too big, this one. This is a 3000 milliamp hump pack, and it's pretty heavy, but I don't know how much weight I'm going to need to put in, whether I'm going to have to put some extra lead weight or anything like that in it. So I thought I can position this around the fuselage. It will make quite a big difference, which is why I've gone for this one. And also the reason why I've got a 3000 milliamp is because I thought I would try one of these on it, which is an auto glow. So basically this is all connected up to the flight pack, onboard glow. You press this button, which I can mount on the outside or in the cockpit or something like that. Press that button and it will ignite the glow for, I think it's 20 seconds. Yes it is, it says there. Allow you to start the engine. If you don't get it started within the 20 seconds, you just press that again, and then it goes for another 20 seconds. But I just thought, again, that's a nice, neat way of getting the glow plug ignited, and I've not used one of these before as well, so we'll see how that goes. But that's why I bought the big 3000 milliamp pack. And what I wanted to do today is I'm just going to get some of the servos installed in the fuselage, primarily the throttle servo. So for that I have got one of these, which is a 20-gram metal geared digital, and this is an Emax servo. I quite like the Emax servos, they seem pretty nice quality. So that's what I am going to be using for the throttle linkage. So that's my next job. Okay, so I've cut the outer snake to size, but obviously there's a bit of flex, as they always are with these things, and the throttles, it's fairly smooth, but it's not, there is a bit of resistance there. So what I'm going to do to stop this from bending is I've just made up some little, cut these out of some light ply, and I'm just going to glue these together with some CA, some thin CA, and then I've got 2 of these, so just some little blocks basically, and then drill same size hole, and then I'm just going to glue one about there and another one about there, just to give some extra support to the snake. Okay, so that's everything installed. I've got the servo installed, got the snake installed. I've used one of the little on the servo here, one of the like cylinders with a hole in it, and then with a grub screw in the end to tighten the snake down. So that will make it quite easy for me to adjust the position of the throttle cable. And the only thing I've got to do, I've not fastened everything into place just yet, because I'll do that towards the end of the build, when I come to actually finally install the engine. But this snake here was it's just a bit too high for the block that I made, so what I've done instead is cut a groove in the top of the block, and then I'll glue that down, probably with some epoxy, just to keep that secure and stop the snake from bending. But I don't know how well you can see that there, but the servo, if I move the servo tester, the servo's moving quite nicely there. Okay, I've just got the engine sort of held in place. I'm literally just holding the engine on the mount, and I don't know how well you can see that there, but that's with the snake not fastened down properly as well. But there's plenty of movement there. That's full throttle, and that's throttle shut. So that
is all good. And I think that'll do. I think I'll wrap it up there for part 2 of this build. So next one will be part 3, obviously, and in that one I am going to get the tail set up, get the servos installed for the tail. I'm waiting for a couple of servos to arrive in the post because I hadn't got the servos for the tail because it uses 2 of these 20-gram servos again. So got those on order. They should be coming pretty soon. So yeah, we'll get the tail fastened on, we'll get all the servos linked up, servo extension leads are going to be needed there, so we'll get all that routed through, and also I'll probably put the undercarriage on as well in the next episode. So hopefully you're enjoying this build. Thanks a lot for watching. If you haven't subscribed, then please hit the subscribe button. I'm trying to build up to 1,000 subscribers. Really appreciate your support. Thanks for everyone who has subscribed. Give me a thumbs up if you like the video, and put a comment if you want to ask any questions, or you think you've spotted something that I could have done better. Any advice, you know, with all these things, we like to share our ideas, so I'm happy with all that. And I will see you soon for the next one.